Hello and welcome to Small Business Pivots. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach who helps guide small businesses from struggle to success. On our podcast, we explore the stories, strategies, and pivots that small business owners have made to build successful businesses doing $1 million and more in annual revenue. Our guest today is Sasha Yablonovsky. Sasha is an immigrant, a mother, a wife, and a businesswoman. Currently, she is the co-CEO and co-founder of Loanspark. Most recently, she served as the president of Career Builder. She is a seasoned executive known for her ability to build high-performance teams that champion the voice of the customer inside organizations and drive desired outcomes for a wide variety of clients. Sasha is motivated by helping companies grow, creating opportunities from within, and improving the culture of employees, as well as serving clients in the way that improves their overall lives from processes and products she is able to implement. Sasha's accomplishments include building out a strategic plan and process to recover lost monies for the largest Ponzi scheme in history, also serving as the voice for working mothers and professional women as a public speaker, and growing her career from project manager to CEO in just under a decade. Outside of work, Sasha likes to travel with her husband and 2 sons, eat out, read fiction, watch Lifetime Movie Network, and spoil her boxer dog, Gia. Let's get to our guest now and learn the pivots she made in business and life that can help you take your business to the next level. Welcome to another Small Business Pivots podcast. We have a wonderful guest today. Sasha, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing fantastic. What part of this world are you coming to us from?
I'm right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, on the lovely East Coast.
If you were to describe your life today, what would you say that looks like?
My life today can be described in happy, hectic adventure. That's
Wow.
pretty accurate.
I love that. Happy, hectic, and adventure.
Yes.
That's awesome. So we know from experience, as we're all humans, we all came into the world the same way. So
We sure did.
what did your early childhood look like, so we can get a feel of your journey and kind of follow you and write that journey with you?
I had the happiest childhood, which a lot of people are surprised to hear when I then proceed to tell them that I was born in communist USSR, raised there, very, very poor. My parents and I, all the horror stories, the lines to buy bread for 4 hours, no milk for months at a
Wow.
time. Water, the government would shut off water to save money in buildings in the middle of Siberian kind of winters, where it would get below 40,
Wow.
pretty regularly. So you have no water, those kind of things. So like the life was really hard, but as a child, I had a phenomenal childhood. My parents did everything possible to have a happy life for us, even in kind of these dire conditions and poverty.
So when did you move to America?
In 91, I was in high school. In 91, it was actually a few weeks before the coup. That happened right before, USSR kind of fell apart and all the republics became their own countries. We moved here because we were seeking political asylum. My family is Jewish. There was a lot of Jewish persecution throughout USSR then, and even now still a lot of anti-Semitism. So we immigrated here as under political asylum status.
Wow. So did they move here for opportunity, for a job, start a business?
None of that initially. It was definitely opportunity and freedom, right? Like we read a lot of things that were forbidden in USSR that talked about the way things work outside of communism, right? So we knew, and my parents, I didn't know anything. I was a teenager, but my parents knew that there was opportunity for them to raise their daughters and give them opportunities that that country could never do. And so that was like a big motivation. So when we moved here, like my parents refused to be on welfare because it was this mentality of we didn't come here for a handout. We came here for
Mm,
the opportunity to build and grow and create our own future because you can do that here. You get those freedoms here. So my dad, he was a really high ranking, he was a colonel in the military in the USSR. When we came here, he was working 3 jobs, scrubbing toilets at gas stations, like anything he could find in order to make money, because that's what you do when you're an immigrant and you come without family or anybody waiting for you with bags of money.
yeah.
And we were poor here too when we moved. And my mom, and language was a barrier. And my mom was a very successful registered nurse back in Russia. And initially, she was working as a babysitter with infants because it doesn't require a lot of, speaking and understanding. So that's how we were making money. And I immediately went to babysit as well. I was 14 when we moved so that I could contribute to, the family and the economics as well. So that's what we did. Eventually, because my parents are just fighters and they claw and they scratch, and I think that's a lot of who I am and have become too. Eventually, my dad became an uber successful entrepreneur running 4 and 5 businesses, all in healthcare services. My mom went back to school and became, again, a super successful, very highly ranked registered nurse at Brigham and Women's Hospital here in Boston, one of the top hospitals, in the world. And, I'm trying to keep up with them.
Wow. That's a very touching story. And I know a lot of times we just kind of read some things in the news or whatever, but to hear it from a person is kind of gives me goosebumps, actually, because I think for a lot of Americans, we kind of take our freedom and opportunities for granted. Would you see that? Would you say that coming from your point of view, from your eyes?
I would. And, like, it's not to be like, I'm married to an American guy, and like, he is super ambitious, never took anything for granted, I think, because he was also raised in dire financial conditions. So you're just like, you don't want to struggle the way were growing up seeing your family struggle. But like, for the most part, I meet a lot of people, and a lot of people that were born and raised in this country, because you don't know any differently. Like, you were always around opportunity. Um, you just kind of think it will always be there. So you're not trying to really climb and claw. Like, you're missing this grit. Not everybody, of course. Not all American
Right.
people are like
Yeah.
this, born and bred. But like, I see this a lot. There isn't like, oh, I'll figure it out. And, you don't really have a lot to prove because you're a natural like person here.
Hmm.
Versus with immigrants, I see a lot of people are like, you're not naturally from here, so you're constantly looked at differently and analyzed and questioned. So you always, as an immigrant, I think you always feel like, I've been here for many, many years now, right? Since 91. And I always feel like I have to prove myself still
Really,
because
to
I
this
wasn't,
day.
to this day, because I
Wow.
wasn't born here. And all the immigrants I talk to, no matter how many years they've been here, whether or not they have an accent, like, you always have to feel like you have something to prove, like you didn't squander it, because
Mm.
your parents or your grandparents came here and struggled to give you this. So it's different. But, also now some immigrants that are moved here and are still on welfare 30 years later because
Yeah.
they're like, I don't care. Look at this country. It's so great. It feeds me.
Yeah.
So it does depend on the person. But I do think naturally all of us have a tendency to fall into taking things for granted when we're just so used to them. It's
Yeah.
like, I think when I first met you, the example I gave, I lived in Manhattan for many years, and there were a lot of people I knew there. They're like born and raised in Manhattan that have never been to Times Square.
Mm.
And it's like, how Times Square is considered to be literally the center of the universe. People save money their entire lives from all over the world to come and step foot in Times Square. But the New Yorkers born and raised there, they're like, oh, it's a tourist trap. I will always be there. When I'll visit some other time. And to me, it was like mind boggling. I mean, you live next to the center of the universe,
Yeah.
literally, and you're like, some other day. And it's like, gosh, I can't. So it's that kind of mentality.
Wow. That's a great analogy there because I tend to do the same thing in my city. I'm in Oklahoma City, and because I was born here, raised here, I've never left, moved, or anything. I kind of take the city as it is, and there are many things that people come to do, and I'm like, wow, I hadn't even done that. So I love that analogy. Times Square, yeah, that would be hard to believe that someone hasn't been there, but I get it. I understand it if you're acclimated to that,
Yeah.
area. So you came to America. Did you have any aspirations as you were growing up to be an entrepreneur, or how did that develop?
Interestingly enough, not at all. As a matter of fact, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I saw my dad build this super successful, life, having multiple businesses, and the successful life appealed to me.
Yes.
But I always liked predictability in my life. So it's like, when you work for someone else, no matter what's happening, most likely you're guaranteed a paycheck, not a bonus, not a commission check, but like your salary is guaranteed.
Yeah.
And, worst case that happens is the company goes out of business or they have layoffs and then you're laid off and you're fired. And that's terrible. But while you're there, the paycheck is guaranteed.
Right.
What I always view business owners as, first you feed the company, then you feed the people, and you're the last one to eat. At least a good business owner does this, right? They don't take money out of the business until there's money to take out for yourself. You prioritize feeding the company and then paying your employees. So, from that perspective, as an owner of the business, a lot of people don't have the guarantee of a paycheck. Like you as an owner, unless you've been in business for a while and fully established and things are really going well, you can't guarantee yourself a paycheck, right? Initially, when you start as a business owner, as an entrepreneur at a startup world, things are, it's a little schizophrenic. I think a lot
Yeah.
of people can relate. It's a roller coaster. You don't know when you're getting off or getting on. You just know you have highs, you have lows, and you can never tell which day is going to be which. That never appealed to me. But yet, a few years ago, I kind of seriously started having this conversation with my co-founder, Michael, about joining Loanspark. And I was like, God, this just seems so unpredictable.
Yeah.
And sounds like I'm not going to get paid for a while. And it's true, right? So,
Right.
but now that I'm in it and I haven't gotten paid in a while, I wouldn't trade it for the world, which is why when you asked me to explain my life today, it's kind of like it's happy, it's hectic, and it's an adventure because I'm on this hectic journey to get my business off the ground, to make it a success because my business is it's young. We really like launched 2 years ago. We took on a first customer less than a year ago. So it's happy. I'm so happy. I've never been happier actually at work. But it's super hectic because you're on this founder's roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so never wanted it, fell into it purposefully recently, and I'm turning 45 next week. So just to put it in perspective for your listeners and viewers, it's like, I am not old and I'm not what most consider very young. So I'm in my 40s and I kind of fell into it and I love it. I love it. But I never had aspirations to be a business owner up until very recently.
Well, it is definitely contagious, and I don't know what's contagious about it, but it is. Once you've done it, it's uh, everything else, or for me, anyways, seems boring.
Me too.
Kind of like you're talking about the hectic, the adventure. My mantra is every day is an exciting adventure with problems to be solved and memories to
Yeah,
be made.
love it.
And
That's so great.
I mean, isn't that fun to think of? I mean, if you
That's
go
great.
into life thinking like that, which is kind of how you're doing, but you had a very successful career too, right? Before you
I,
got into entrepreneurship that you gave up, I guess.
I did, yeah. I had a successful career. I was afraid to say yes to business ownership for a while, but I was never afraid to say yes to corporate career challenges, which is what I did. And, I started out doing, actually, I started out in IT back when no women in IT and back when, like it was in the 90s, and back when there wasn't a lot of people that could speak human while working in IT. So I did really well in that world because I was very technically savvy, but I was also great customer facing. And I think that really kind of jump started my career in business strategy and leadership. More recently, I was before I went to found Loanspark, I was a president career builder. Before that, I was one of the senior VPs at a company that went public, and I got to be at, NASDAQ ringing the bell when we IPO'd.
Wow.
So like I've had these kind of phenomenal experiences and pictures to back it up.
Okay.
But so yes, I've built that success, but it was also similarly, which is what's attributing, I think, to the success as a business owner today. It's just you have to kind of just go for it with no fear.
Mm.
A lot of the times people are afraid to change roles within the organization, change the organization, because it's like, well, I've never done that job before. Well, no one's woken up and said, oh, I'm a CEO today. Like CEOs today weren't CEOs 5 years ago. They were project managers, directors. They did other odd things to get their experience to be a CEO. So I think my career and the successes I've accomplished and the mistakes I've made. I'm really proud of the mistakes I've made. I don't think we talk about that enough. I think mistakes are important, really important. So I'm proud of the mistakes I've made and the things that I've accomplished in my corporate career, because all of that, kind of took and fed what I'm able to do as a business owner for my company Loanspark today.
That's great. So it sounds like one of the significant pivots that you made in life was overcoming fear.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah,
Yes.
yes, yes.
That's the one.
Well,
Fear is a good one,
yeah.
but it's true. It's true.
Well, I always say discomfort means we're growing, right? So
Yes.
if you don't have
No
a
one
bit of
likes to be no one likes to be uncomfortable, but it's true.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
true. You have to be uncomfortable in order to grow and really push yourself and do better for yourself or your family. And honestly, if you don't have a family, just to do better for yourself, because we're all motivated by something, whether you want your kids to go to a better school or whether you yourself want to take that trip or 5 of those trips in a year, or you want to buy that watch, or you want to get that car, or you want that cool penthouse with, the ocean view. Whatever drives you, that makes you get giddy and greedy inside, that you
yeah.
want, that motivates you and makes you ambitious. Yeah, you have to definitely get uncomfortable.
Wow. So let's talk about this successful business that you and Michael are building together. So you started, what is it? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, the company is Loanspark. We are a white label business lending as a service provider. And what that means is we work with B2B companies. So think payment companies, right? Payments companies that work with other businesses and provide services for them. One of the ways that they can expand their revenue services, but also provide an additional benefit to the small and medium businesses they serve, is to become a financial lender to those businesses. And what it does is it gives easy access to the businesses that are their customers, but also it shields the business customers from all the predatory brokers and lenders that are in the space. And they do that vis-a-vis Loanspark. So we enable any B2B company to also become a trusted business lender to all of their customers. It creates a great customer experience, great stickiness, like the renewal rates go up, in the customer base. But more importantly, the reason why we got into it is because we saw firsthand, like all the business owners, like your entire audience, at some point or another, you have to, as a business owner, go out and either raise equity if you want or get debt.
Right.
And not all debt is bad debt. There's great good debt out there. You have to
Correct.
borrow money. Banks are limited in what they can offer. And then you fill out one application online, and then next thing you know, you have hundreds of
Yes.
brokers and lenders. You don't know where it's coming from. They're bombarding you with calls offering you this SBA loan and that cash advance. You don't know who to trust. You have to be like borderline financial genius to really understand what kind of debt to take on for your business. So Michael saw that as an issue. There's process issues in the whole lending space. So what our company does is we really protect and guide and handhold the business owner so it's not complicated for them. And we do it all in the name brand of the company that, hires us essentially to establish it for them.
So do business owners, can they directly contact you for funding?
If it's well, not exactly our business model.
Okay.
We establish it for the B2B, but we have business owners that have come to us directly, and we've never turned them away.
Okay.
Um, just because, we want to help everybody, but our business model is not direct to borrower. It's to an entity that services the
Oh,
SMBs.
okay. Okay. So with your successful career, you've probably learned a lot of things. You talked about failures because I'm like you. My greatest lessons learned are from failures. You probably brought a lot to this company, and that's probably why it's kind of catapulted in the direction it's going. What are some of those things that you've brought to this company?
Okay, well, first I'd like to say it was both mine and Michael's. I don't
Yes.
actually think I could do it without Michael. We both bring so much to the table, and our experience is different but fits together. So, my hats off to business owners that are able to just do it without a partner. Like, you're way stronger, better, smarter than me. I don't think I could do it on my own. So, like, I know what my limitations are. But some of the things I brought to the table were I'm really, really strong operationally. I know how to execute. Where I lack is um, the big, audacious ideas.
Hmm.
Like when you start a company, you have to have a beautiful idea. I'm not the idea person, which is why I'm so lucky to have Michael. Michael is the idea person, and I am executing on it, helping execute. Of course, I come up, every leader will come up with ideas for improvements, but I didn't come up with the idea of Loanspark. He did. And once he did, I was able to pull at all the tentacles of how we can make it fantastic, better than anything else out there, and what it will take to execute. So the biggest thing I bring to the table is execution. Now, to me, what execution means is I'm fierce when it comes to meeting deadlines and making sure others do too. And I'm huge at driving accountability. So a lot of the businesses out there and business owners I work with, because your cup and plate is so full and you are in charge of, like, you wear more hats than heads on earth, right?
Yeah.
You have a tendency to drop the ball, which is you can't. Like, you can't as a business owner. Of course, some things will be missed, but like the critical stuff can't be. So, for me, the biggest thing is making sure everything's done on track in order to push us forward towards our KPIs and goals. And make sure no one in the company, myself included, just is like, oh, I'll get to that next week. Because that week that you're not achieving or accomplishing something, you have a competitor behind your back that's trying to build and take over your piece of the pie. So, those, like, I'm a driver.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots, a podcast created for small business owners who feel like their business is stuck, for business owners who feel they are working hard and not getting anywhere. For more small business advice, go to my webpage, michaeldmorrison.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, or share this podcast. Let's get back to our guest.
I do.
I think you just gave about 30 nuggets in that short paragraph you just shared. One, I want to go back because you make a very great point that's not talked about enough, and that is having a partner. And in business, it's not always a business partner. It could be that key employee. But
True.
I work and talk to so many small business owners that are struggling. They might have a staff of 30, but they don't have that one person that can hold them accountable, that can execute things, because most business owners are a visionary. Kind of like the E-Myth. If anyone's read that book, he talks about the visionary. Then he also talks about the technician. I mean, you got to have all those facets of a business to be successful. But the one critical component is having that one partner, whether it be an employee, a CFO, CM, whatever they are, that can execute, right? And that's what you bring. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you hold yourself to those high standards? Is there any things that you can share with business owners? Because I know a lot of times we all want to be successful and driven and accomplished, but sometimes it's just hard.
I make lists. So I'm like, I'm kind of a techie because I've gone from tech, but like I legitimately write everything down and keep notes. So I do it two ways. Um, I keep lists. I keep
Okay.
lists and I need to cross them off. And if I don't, that's how I know I'm falling behind. And the other thing I do is I manage my schedule, my calendar, in the way that most people don't. So I will block off time to eat or to take a walk. So I have a dog, so I make
Oh,
sure I break
that's
during the day. Can I tell you, like, best therapy ever, because
yes.
it forces me, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, even if you don't have a dog, whoever is listening, force yourself that 15, 20 minutes. You need to have a couple of breaks throughout the day, no matter, like, hair on fire, I don't care what's happening. You got to figure
Yep.
it out. You have to step away from your workspace and take a walk around your block, go sit outside without your phone, because in those few minutes, what happens is there's a reset happens, and whatever might be blocked or however you feel you're just like burned out in that moment, it really helps you reset, super healthy, and then you're much more productive for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. So those things, I block off time to work on very specific tasks, and even if my phone rings at that time, I ignore it, because I know that if I don't review those legal agreements, like if there's a complicated legal agreement I have to review for a new partnership, if I don't do that in that moment, my full brain is not in it, which means I'm more likely to make mistakes. And so, like, it's really just being super diligent with the way I manage my calendar, um, and keeping lists. So that's how I balance it.
I love that. So I study a lot of neuroscience just as a hobby and the way the brain works. And two things you mentioned was, and I see this a lot. So if anybody wants to debate me, they can. But what people didn't see if they're listening to this is you held up an actual notepad with a pen.
I
And
did.
it is scientifically
Thank
proven
you.
that if you write things down, you will retain it better. You're more focused versus I talk to a lot of small business owners and they'll show me their electronic device. And I'm like, no, that's not the same. That's not the same. And
Mm-mm.
most, kind of like what you said earlier, not most, I guess a majority of people, if they're using their electronic device, they are not as productive as business owners that I work with that actually write things down. I work with so
Yeah.
many business owners and I see a significant difference. Would you say that's huge?
100% true. I've seen that too. And it's easy to think, oh, everything's on my phone, but after all these years of using technology and especially cell phones, our brains actually reprogrammed themselves to know that, like, you don't remember people's phone numbers anymore
Yes.
and things like that. We've taught ourselves that we don't need to, like, the brain rewired. So that's why there's a big difference between manually writing it down. Your brain processes that information better versus you typing a note to yourself, which is the same as texting somebody, which is you're not going to remember, which is the
Right.
same as emailing or other things. Your brain just knows to tune that out. Like, we rewired ourselves with all the technology that's at our fingertips. But that's a whole other conversation, Michael, because I think, clearly we're all in technology today, but I don't think it's all good. I think a lot of it is pretty evil.
Oh no, I totally agree. In fact, Richard Branson, one of the
Yeah.
wealthiest, successful people in the world, he says his greatest ideas come from his writing. So he takes a notepad everywhere, and if he
Mm,
has like a, wouldn't that be cool to do this? He'll write it down. Like he just has
yeah.
notepad after notepad, and he's like, my best ventures have come from looking back in my notepad and going, oh wow, I forgot I
Yeah.
thought that. Let's go do it.
Yep. Most of the same, like most of the most successful people I've met that are CEOs of well-known public companies, like, handwrite everything.
Yeah, and then something else you mentioned was breaks. So
Mm,
very powerful. Taking care. I always say that you've got to take care of number one first because no one else will. So the
mm-hmm.
only way to do that is go out and get some sunshine, a breath of fresh air,
Mm-hmm.
get rid of the distractions just for a few minutes. And I
Mm-hmm.
see that being so critical with most successful business owners that I talk to and work with.
Yeah, it's
So
impactful.
what are some pivots pivots in business that you find have been instrumental to that have gotten you where you are today?
In my business or just in general?
And it could be both.
Um, The biggest pivot I would say is, so we talked about fear a bit, but the biggest pivot I think is not being afraid to look at something different and new. The whole, I mean, we've all heard the whole like, oh, we've always done it this way. And it's like, oh, we've always done it that way is kind of the killer of businesses, careers, lives.
Yeah.
Um, the biggest pivot is it's kind of like throughout my career, I haven't been afraid to do like a full kind of 90-degree turn or like 180 turn, just to be like, okay, thoughtfully, of course, not like, oh, shiny object, but like
Right.
thoughtfully, but like, oh, this is interesting. I will learn from this. Those kind of pivots have been the biggest in my career. In Loanspark, the pivot was initially the idea was, of course, to have as much automation as possible because automation helps everybody, right, to move faster with decision making, etc. The pivot for us in Loanspark was, automation is not the way to truly serve the business owner in lending or in anything really, but in lending, in our business model, you need to have a human first approach too.
Mm.
So for us, the pivot came when we already invested so much in proper AI automation and things that help the business owner with gathering of the documentation, help the lender with decision making. It is truly inserting a human that's dedicated to our customer's customer, which is who we serve as the borrower. Really dedicating a person to that person to be like a one-on-one model where we're able to truly handhold through all of the financial decisions to get their business, the funding that they need. That was a significant pivot because what we saw from that point on is that our success rate just skyrocketed.
Wow.
No matter how much automation you have in the world today or how easy the technology makes tools, what I find, and this proved it, is that us on the human level, you want to pick up the phone and call a Sasha and ask a
Yes.
question and not do it through chat or email. You want to be able to call and have someone actually in human speak walk you without the jargon, heavy jargon, in human speak, really walk you through and answer your questions the way you would want to talk to a 5-year-old. I always say if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't understand it and it's too complicated. So like that's kind of what we practice here at Loanspark. So that was a pivot. It's really like, let's not forget, yes, it's more expensive for me as a business, right, to
Mhm.
employ these wonderful humans that do the one-on-one outreach to the borrower. But honestly, it is so worth it because at the end, our customer service is just phenomenal.
So are you saying that you invested in the automation and then you pivoted to the human? Is that what you were saying?
We combined it, but it was a
Or
bit of a pivot because we did not initially want to invest so much in the one-on-one human approach. The pivot was investing more
mm,
in the human approach for sure, because we still all want to connect and talk to a normal person on the other side of the phone or
that's
video.
that's a great point. And to date, I don't think anyone's even mentioned anything like that as a pivot in their business. But I think that's very instrumental because I see so many business owners where they've invested in, put a lot of money into this one area of their business and it's not working and they just keep pouring
Yeah,
more money into it and more. And you were like, no, let's pivot, go a different direction. If it's not working, let's, tweak it or whatever.
yeah,
And I see a lot of business owners never make that shift, if you will.
yeah, yeah. And we
So,
were lucky enough to do that before we even could see whether it's working or not. Like it was because again, we have the luxury of we are such a young company. We haven't had a lot of time to make mistakes, but like, it's one of those things as a business owner, you have a vision and you build out a roadmap. And a lot of the times it's super scary to pivot from that because you feel like, but this is the road we're driving down, and this is the road that's going to get me to build Rome.
yeah,
And it's scary to be like, no, man, like I know you've dreamt about this road and you've invested hundreds of thousands or whatever dollars into that road, but the road sucks now. All right, there's bumps. It's eroding. There is a different road that's veering off this way. It looks better. Let's just
yes.
go there. You know what I mean? It is scary to do that.
Yeah, I want to expand that comment because that is so true with a lot of business owners. We put a lot of time and effort into our plan, right? Like what you're
Uh-huh.
saying. And we think once we've made the plan, okay, I'm done with that, check. We put the plan away, we follow it. We never get off track or pivot.
Revisit. Yeah.
And I want to share with business owners what I've learned over the last few decades that I've been a business owner is that's just a plan. That's all it is. And
I agree.
everything that you do in business, whether it be your purpose, your mission, your vision, those are all subject to change based on economy, your customers. We had COVID a few years ago. It's just owning a business is not checking boxes. And I know a lot of business owners, they'd like to check that box and move on to the next big shiny object.
Yeah.
And you're making a very valid point that you can't do that to be successful. Is you've got to be able to be adaptable.
Yeah. Well, think about it. The whole purpose of your podcast, like the pivots, right?
Yes.
It's nothing but in life and in business to accomplish success, you have to be okay to be flexible and keep pivoting. Some pivots are bigger and harsher and harder. Some are more minor and more noticeable, if you will, but it's still, a pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think the whole point, which is, I think that's why I think your show is so great, and to have this open dialogue that teaches business owners is that you're not failing just because you're changing or pivoting in business. It means you're being scrappy and smart and understanding the buyer and the market enough to know when it's time to slightly change direction or a lot change direction, right? So it's all the things that we have to analyze. And I think people, business owners and CEOs, are afraid to make changes because they feel like, oh man, that must mean I didn't know what I was doing. No, you knew what you were doing last year, and that was the right decision for you and the company then. That doesn't mean it's the right path for you this year for the company, right? The overall strategy is always the same. Grow, be successful, make money, serve the customer, right? But like how you get there, the execution, you will always have to pivot. Otherwise, you die.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Or like you said earlier in the podcast, someone will pass you, a competitor.
Yeah, someone will pass you. Well, yeah, you die. Your business dies because someone else will outpace you.
Yep, just go home, close your door, and sit in a closet.
Yeah.
If there was a question that what is one question that you enjoy someone asking that you like to share the answer to? Is there anything?
No.
Okay.
I'll answer anything.
Well, sometimes people are like, well, I wish they would ask this question because I could really expand or share knowledge. Is there anything like that you have? No, you're just,
no, I think you've already expanded a lot of knowledge on this wonderful dialogue.
Just in 30 minutes, we have tons of information here. So just to give because we're out of time, unbelievably, but just to give kind of small business owners, because we get stuck in our head, our mindset shuts down. We can't think past tomorrow. So what does it look like coming from a successful mindset like yourself in career and owning a business? What does a 5 or 10-year plan look like to you? How do you create that? Because a lot of business owners don't think ahead. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I don't have a 10-year plan because I think it's like too far out for where my company is today. But we do have a 5-year plan. And for us, it's obviously world domination. But if you want to break that down a little further, it is to grow thoughtfully. So obviously we have a revenue goal that we have set, Michael and I, for our company for this year, for next year, and for 5 years plus out. So I think it's important to have that. If you are beating those goals year over year, your target for yourself revenue-wise is too low. The other big plan for the company is what we kind of touched on, is to really be mindful of the competition. Right now, we have the luxury of not having a lot of people competing with our business model and what we do. But I know who's building because I do that kind of research all the time. You have to. And I want to know what they're doing, how they're doing it, how they're planning to do it differently. So the goal is for the next year or two to get much further away with product and people and technology so that the competitors have a tougher time catching up to me, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two big things. We have revenue goals We want to, and then we want to do better than every like month and every quarter. What did we not do well enough? But it's not good enough to do that year over year because that's too short-sighted. Some plans for the company and improvement take longer to develop, whether it's product or the type of people you want to bring on board. So that's why like we plan right now where we're at. We're almost 2 years, young as a company. We're planning for 5 years, and that is that's how we're looking at it and planning it.
I love that. I love that. Well, any final words of wisdom? You've shared a lot. If not, we might sign off here.
I do have something. Don't
Awesome.
be afraid to seek out and ask for help. And help is not like, oh, help me, I don't know what I'm doing. When I say ask for help as a business owner, I mean surround yourself with mentors and other people and just brainstorm. Like, it's okay to say, hey, I'm stuck, because most likely others have been. Or I messed this thing up and we didn't hit our target and I can't quite figure out why. How would you go about that? And just don't be afraid to get that kind of tribal knowledge from other business owners. Seek out communities locally, go online chats. I don't know what people do. I'm lucky enough to have surrounded myself with people that are further ahead than me and less ahead than me. So we all kind of brainstorm together on occasion. It's really helpful. It does not make you a failure. It makes you smart enough to know that that's what you need to build a successful company, to ensure your employees are happy and growing with you.
Learn to earn, right?
Yes.
Amen.
Well said.
Well, we are all glad you're here in America, and we are all rooting for you. And thank you so much for sharing your time and knowledge and experience with all of our listeners today.
Thank you, Michael. It was a pleasure. Good luck, everybody out there. It's hard, but you got this.
Yes. Welcome to the recap and the Coach's Corner, where I give free advice from a business coach who works with numerous small business owners around the world. Today, our recap today, something that really stood out to me from Sasha was something she mentioned. She is an immigrant. And one of the things that we talked about off the podcast and a little bit on there was how Americans take advantage of opportunity, the land of the free. And what I mean by that is maybe not take advantage of the opportunities that we have here. And if you look around, a lot of immigrants are coming here and being very successful, and I applaud them. Way to go. Land of the free, land of the opportunity. I encourage you to pick up this book. I'm not one of those guys that can say poop or get off the pot in a very direct and firm way. But there is a book that can and will do that. It's by Michael Vick. He is the author also of The Profit First and many other books that are out there. But this one's called The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. The Tell It Like It Is Guide to Cleaning Up in Business, even if you are at the end of your role. Now, I mentioned you might pick up the book, but I encourage you stronger to pick up the Audible, because he actually reads it himself and he puts the oomph in the words that need to be oomphed for you to get you to poop or get off the pot. And he will say it in the correct manner or way that you should really hear it, because there's a lot of wannabe entrepreneurs out there. We live in the land of the free and opportunity in the United States of America. If you live here, I want to encourage you to take her information and implement it into yourself, your personal development, your business development, and take advantage of everything that we have to offer here. You're only holding yourself back. Which leads me to the Coach's Corner. In the Coach's Corner today, our simple action is she talked about business partnerships and the power of a business partnership and how it's worked to her benefit and her partner, Michael. And I know that for most people, we've always heard the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. And that is true in most cases. If you've listened to me or followed me at all, you know that I've filed bankruptcy. I went through a bad partnership. The company filed bankruptcy. I filed bankruptcy. I'm not proud of it, but it's part of who I am. It's in my DNA. So rather than pout and be bitter about it, I took that lesson. If you remember what I say, my greatest lessons learned are from failures. I took that failure and I researched and talked to business owners. I talked to business owners who went through something like I did. I talked to business owners who were very successful, trying to figure out what were those key essentials that you've got to have or know going into a business partnership. And because business partnership is, according to the statistics, thought about by most business owners of, should I be part of a business partnership or should I not? Or do I need one? Why would I need one? We have a course. Go to Michael D. Morrison. This is your action item. At least check this out. Go to michaeldmorrison.com, and under the tab Solutions, we have courses. Click on the courses, and about halfway down the page, you'll see our featured course is on business partnerships. For less than $50, we can save you tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, in the breakup of a partnership, in litigation when it doesn't work out because you didn't know some of the things you should have researched. It's similar to courting. You wouldn't just marry someone the second you meet them. Well, I'm not going to say you shouldn't. I'm sure there are people are. Most of the time, that wouldn't work. There are things you need to talk about. There's things you need to discuss. There's things that you need to do. There's systems. There's processes that you need to follow to have a successful partnership. What I did was took the information that I researched and put it all into this bundle in 90 minutes or less of things that can help you consider, is a partnership good for you, first of all? Secondly, what are the things that the potential business partners need to talk about? And what do we do next? How do we move forward? I encourage you as the coach for you to go to that and at least check it out. Like I said, see if it's something that you'd be interested in. Like I said, for less than $50 and less than 90 minutes, you will have at least the things that most business owner partnerships say that they wish they would have known before they signed the dotted line. I look forward to seeing you on the next podcast.